Don't you ever say that again about your fathers, because they are not cowards. You think I'm brave because I carry a gun? Well, your fathers are much braver because they carry responsibility. For you, your brothers, your sisters, and your mothers. And this responsibility is like a big rock that weighs a ton. It bends and it twists them until finally it buries them under the ground. And as nobody says they have to do this, they do it because they love you and because they want to. I have never had this kind of courage. Running a farm, working like a mule every day with no guarantee will ever come of it. This is bravery. That's why I never even started anything like that. That's why I never will.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Rule of Thirds, a monthly arts and culture podcast with an emphasis on film criticism. Each month, we watch 3 films and discuss them amongst ourselves. Join our conversation on Facebook and Twitter at Thirds Rule. As always, I'm Stephen Foxworthy, and with me are my stalwart compatriots, Samuel Dumas.
Hello.
And Caleb Dunkerson.
Yo.
Good day, gentlemen. On this episode, we take a look at the significance of story by dissecting 3 films with a nearly identical narrative. But before we take a look at tonight's films, we must ask that age-old and essential question. Gentlemen, what are we drinking tonight?
I truly do not know. I mean, it's Coke in some sort of alcohol, but I'm actually not sure what it is.
It's Bargain Basement Canadian Whiskey, which is A-OK in my book because it is quite tasty.
I personally like it better than Crown Royal.
I can see that. I've never had Crown Royal.
I'm pretty sure it's just reject Crown Royal.
Oh, it's Kirkland's signature. I see.
Yeah. So I think it's reject.
Is that the Costco? Mm-hmm. That's brilliant.
$20 for that.
I do love Costco. They've got Dragon's Milk Bourbon Barrel Stout, like a giant bottle for like $6.50 at Costco.
I think that's where I got mine from.
Yeah.
Or maybe Sam's Club's where I got the bottle.
I think I'm going to get some of that for the next podcast.
I had it before it was popular.
Yeah. Of course you did, because you're the ultimate hipster. So we're all at Sam's tonight. So excuse me. So we're all drinking the same thing, and we're all kind of hanging out together. It's very rare.
Actually, I'm just drinking Coke. I don't have the alcohol in mine.
We can rectify that. You've got that.
Personally, want to.
Well, go for it. You can also use that bottle of Captain Morgan 1671 there beside you, and add some of that to your Coca-Cola.
Well, I'll have you know that's not what's inside that bottle.
What?
That is Kroger brand rum.
Kroger brand rum.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is a fascinating topic, guys. I'm loving this conversation.
Now we know how poor Sam is.
This is why we have podcasts, gentlemen. No, it's okay because honestly, this whiskey tastes pretty good. So
It's okay that you're poor because Steven is satisfied with his drink.
I know. Well,
so
I know.
It's okay.
I know. It's like, why pay money for alcohol when you can get cheaper alcohol? It's the same thing.
That's just as good, if not better. So I'm at peace with that.
True.
I'm at peace with Sam's poverty. That's cool. All right, so let's go ahead and move on then, because I guess the alcohol discussion's over. Good talk, guys. Good talk. Over the last couple of months, we at Rule of Thirds have discussed 2 of the most important aspects of the filmmaking process, directing and film editing. But we've saved perhaps one of the most crucial elements for tonight, that is storytelling. To do this, we look at how one story can be told effectively in 3 incredibly diverse films across 3 incredibly diverse genres. Caleb, what is our first film on the docket for this evening?
Well, I hope that the crucial aspect of filmmaking of telling a story is not like, you know what, I screwed up what I was going to say. You know what? Moving on.
We can fix it in post.
Over the last couple of months, Steven has been saying the same thing that I just said because I'm on the wrong line. Well, guys, this has been a great podcast so far. I think I'm going to bow out gracefully right here and just hand off the Rule of Thirds podcast to you 2.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, tonight's been Rule of 2. Tonight's Caleb Dunkerson's last night at Rule of Thirds. We wish him a fond farewell.
Yes. Okay. So, in all seriousness, people.
How much of that have you had?
When you're on a roll, you're on a roll. Okay.
Hello
and welcome to another edition of the Third Podcast.
You need me to give you your
lead in
again?
Arts and Culture podcast with an emphasis on film criticism. All right, guys. This is your new third. His name is Axel. It is pronounced Axel. Axel. Chill out, bro. Chill out, bro.
Nailed the stroking a wiener. Dog.
Caleb, what's our first film for tonight?
Okay, well, our first film for tonight is Akira Kurosawa's. That's a good pronunciation, right?
Yeah,
I don't
it's
want to
only-
offend the Japanese
I think it's the only
audience.
pronunciation.
Right.
Well, his seminal 1954 masterpiece, Seven Samurai. When an agrarian society in feudal Japan is accosted by a gang of murderous bandits who threaten their very existence, the farmers are forced to seek out protection from without in the form of a group of Ronin samurai, which is redundant, but I put it in there because I don't like the way that Stephen worded it when he wrote this for me.
Whatever.
To rebuff the invading horde. That is the Ronin samurai, by the way, who are doing the rebuffing. As Kurosawa's first samurai film, the narrative of Seven Samurai paved the way for countless imitators, including our next film up for consideration. Stephen?
Next, we have the 1960 John Sturges Americanization of Kurosawa's classic, The Magnificent Seven. When an agrarian society in rural Mexico is accosted by a gang of murderous bandits who threaten their very existence, they are forced to seek out protection from without in the form of a group of wandering gunslingers to rebuff the invading horde. A classic in its own right, The Magnificent Seven is known for launching the Hollywood careers of such greats as Steve McQueen, James Coburn, Charles Bronson, and Eli Wallach. Sam?
Our final film tonight is Pixar Animation's sophomore effort, 1998's A Bug's Life. When an agrarian society of computer-animated ants is accosted by a gang of murderous grasshoppers who threaten their very existence, they are forced to seek out protection from without in the form of a group of talentless circus bugs to rebuff the invading horde. Circus bugs. Weird. With an all-star voice cast that includes David Foley, Kevin Spacey, and Dennis Leary, A Bug's Life combines heart and humor in a way that Pixar used to do really well.
Hey, what about John Ratzenberger? Why does he not get top billing?
Well, because his role is relatively minor by comparison.
But that he's still part of the all-star cast.
I mean, if I had listed every person who was a part of the All-Star cast, we would be here all night
Okay.
just naming actors in the film.
Hey, yeah, the voice actress who plays Kyrie in Kingdom Hearts is also in this. You didn't name her. I don't know what her name is, but
I don't know what her name is either.
she was Dot, that little baby.
Hayden Panettiere.
Oh, okay.
She was also the cheerleader on Heroes and the little girl from Remember the Titans.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't watch any of
know
those
what-
shows.
Yeah, me either. And one of those is a movie. So,
Whatever. At any rate, so gentlemen, just to kind of get our conversation started tonight, what role does story play in the overall filmmaking process?
Well, it's kind of the point of the film is the story, unless you're in some weird artsy film, in which case it's not the point. But for the most part, for movies for the general public, that's why you're watching movies, for the story.
Okay. And what?
I only watch movies for the graphics.
You were a big Avatar fan, weren't you?
No. Those were bad graphics. I like good graphics. Thank you. Such as real life things and human beings. Those are cool.
Like in Citizen Kane.
Yes, Citizen Kane.
What
Excellent
graphics?
The graphics were so good.
So graphic.
So many pixels. I mean, I guess it was digitized at some point to
At
be put
some
on the
point.
DVD.
Sure.
Yes.
But yeah, that's why it's important.
Okay.
That's what role it plays.
I agree with Sam.
Yeah, I
I don't think we can really. There's not a lot of room to
Disagree.
yeah.
well, and I mean, for me personally, I go to see films for the story. Like, I also like good acting, so that's going to take me out. But I think every part of the film is in service of telling the story. If it's a story worth telling, so much the better. If it's not a story worth telling, thanks, Siri. That's going to end up taking something away in the long run, I think, from what's going on overall, and I think it's going to ultimately damage the quality of the film.
Yeah.
Now, for the part of these films tonight, I think they're all starting from a really good place in terms of story. So, I mean, they've got that to go on. It's what's interesting, I think, about the films that we're discussing tonight is what they do with the same story and how they modify and tell it differently to fit their own purposes that I find particularly interesting.
I don't know. I don't think it's entirely. I mean, okay, I don't disagree with Steven for sure about the story aspect of a story, right? But I think it's kind of slightly reductive to refer to how these have a generally similar plot synopsis as being they all have the same story, and what they do with the story is what makes them interesting, because at the same time the individual character arcs and things that happen in the stories that differentiate them are also part of the story of each individual film. So I think generally we're saying that they have the same premise, but they are definitely different stories.
Okay. I look forward to hearing you expound upon that treatise that thesis as we carry on through the evening.
No, I think he will as we go into it, as we get more detail.
Oh, I'm certain he will. That's what I say.
Exactly what he's saying.
I look forward to hearing him go into that more, because I think that's going to be a really interesting through line for our discussion tonight. So I guess this first question may be completely off base then, but I'm going to ask it anyway, or the next question rather. How effectively is the single story of the agrarian society hiring outside help to overcome invaders told across each of these selected films for the evening?
I think that specific aspect of it is the one thing which they all do basically the exact same.
Yeah.
Is we're threatened, let's go into the city, find someone to help us.
They all deliver on that premise.
Yeah.
Very well. I don't think that you could really argue that any of them does a better or worse job of delivering that premise.
Yeah, because they all seek out the old person who then gives them the advice that we have to fight. Except for maybe in Bug's Life, it happened a little bit differently, but it was still effective. It still did basically the same thing.
Right.
They went into the city.
Well, I mean, the structure of Magnificent Seven is set up to be almost directly, and I mean, in some cases, beat for beat, that of Kurosawa's Seven Samurai.
Yeah.
It is, in a very true sense, a remake, and I think Bug's Life veers off the remake path a little bit.
Well, there's some funny. We'll come back to that because there is something funny about it being a remake. It's also a remake of a parody of Samurai.
It is, and I definitely have that in my notes as well. Yeah. So we're definitely, man, we are just firing on all cylinders tonight. Apparently, we just need to discuss this stuff as it comes up into our heads, because this outline is apparently not helping us tonight. I'm going to go ahead and skip the next question. What are our overall thoughts for the individual films? Let's go ahead and start with Seven Samurai, I suppose.
Well, that movie was 3.5 hours of awesomeness.
It really was.
Like, you think that 3.5 hours would be too long, but you realize that 3.5 hours could have been too short.
Honestly, and I felt the same way. Like, at the end of the time, and I did break this up into 2 evenings worth of viewing, because otherwise it would have been like 1 a.m. and I got to get up and work.
Yeah.
But what I found really cool about it is, and I didn't feel this way about the other longest movie that we watched up to this point, which was Once Upon a Time in the West.
It's almost 2 hours, wasn't it?
Well, it was significantly less than this one, but it was the longest film up to this point that we'd seen. I didn't feel like, for my biggest issue with Once Upon a Time in the West was the pacing and just how slow it was paced. I didn't feel that at all with Seven Samurai. I felt like it was paced really well, and that every story beat that was there needed to be there in service of telling the story.
Yeah, because every scene, like, the movie can be broken down. Like, each scene itself was almost an individual contained, like, masterpiece of scene. They just kept leading into each other.
It seriously
there
is.
Was no fluff. It's
a master's class in filmmaking. It's really what it seems like to me. Yeah. In almost every aspect.
It's considered to be the greatest Japanese movie ever made.
And among the greatest films of all time.
Yeah.
I think it was like 3rd or 5th or 8th or something on the latest Sight and Sound list of best films of all time. I mean, it's a very recognized as a very great film. I'd never seen it until I watched it this past time.
Yeah, same here.
I actually had to watch it twice, because the first time I watched it, I realized I got seriously 2 hours into the movie and realized I hadn't been taking any notes for the podcast.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there just engrossed in the film, and I think we were on the group chat that night, and I looked down at my phone, I saw that, and I'm like, oh crap, I'm supposed to be watching this for a podcast. I should probably take some notes.
Yeah.
So I ended up having to watch it again like 2 nights later.
My first impressions were a bit humorous. I got to the hour mark, and the samurai, actually there were not even actual samurai in the movie,
right,
arrived to the village, and I'm like, okay, so now they find the bad guys. How is there 2.5 more hours of movie? what is supposed to happen?
Mm-hmm.
Look, I know the basic plot because I've seen Bugs Life a million times. I know that I've seen Magnificent Seven a couple of times as a child, but
Right.
Well, it's funny that you
Yeah.
say that particular thing. That like they it's like what else is going to happen? Because I felt the same way about Magnificent Seven, and then I ended up, which even later on in the movie, which of course Magnificent Seven wasn't 3.5 hours long, but
No,
I
not
felt
quite.
the same way. There was a point at which I was like, well, what else can happen? And then more stuff happened, and it wasn't nearly as satisfying as Seven Samurai.
yeah, Seven Samurai.
I
There's
agree.
like conflict, like even like them training them. Like one of my favorite scene in that movie is when the Ronin find out that the farmers have all the samurai equipment because they've been like at battles, like where like weak and wounded men will wander out, they hunt them down and kill them, and that was like a serious thing for them. But then Toshiro Mifune gives this speech about the reason they do this is because you made them this way. Like,
Yes.
everything is your fault.
Oh my gosh, that's such a and
It is
that.
a wonderful speech.
Can we just take a pause for the cause and talk about how amazing Toshiro Mifune is?
Yes.
Because oh my word, his character is so electric and his performance is so dynamic.
Mhm.
I couldn't take my eyes off of him. Anytime he was on screen, I was just like, oh my gosh, this guy.
Yeah.
This guy's amazing.
Yeah, read a thing where Kurosawa said that he can do more in 10 feet of film than all Japanese actors can do in 300 feet, which is a lot. Because honestly, they're not very emotive people.
Right.
They're not. The Japanese movies tend to be slower pacing just because the way that they emote emotions. It's different. It's not a problem. But he has a more Western style of acting and emoting himself. So he just,
And that's
Upstairs,
probably
so
why I
yeah.
found his characterization so dynamic, is because he is such a. It's more in line with what we're used to as Western film goers.
Mhm.
We're used to that kind of showmanship and that kind of filmmaking. And there were times when it did seem a little too much and a little over the top. But when he was on fire, and he played the anger and the brutality, and then would turn on a dime and just play this absolutely brilliant vulnerability.
Mhm.
And in that scene in particular, and it's his best scene in the film,
Yeah.
and it completely defines his character, because that's the scene where it really comes out who he was.
because he's not actually a Ronin.
Right.
He's not actually he has no samurai background either.
Yeah.
He's just a wandering guy with a sword.
He's probably a
sword.
farmer who has killed another samurai
Mhm.
and who has taken his papers and taken his weapons.
Did you catch the whole joke with his papers?
Yes.
That's a girl's name. They gave him a girl's name.
That's hilarious.
Because he's illiterate.
Yes.
He is illiterate. And he did steal that tree from saying this, and they all laugh because, like, oh, it's your 13-year-old girl.
Yeah.
So they just call him that.
Yeah. And so he does. The entire film, they call him by a girl's name. You never find out what his real name is. And you really don't care. Because, and that character, he's dynamic, he's electrifying. And the sword, I wrote in my notes, I wonder if he's compensating for something. He actually is, because he's not a samurai.
Yeah.
So he's absolutely
That's the
compensating.
biggest sword I've ever seen in a movie.
It is. I swear it's as tall as every bit as tall as he is.
Yeah. It's like, well, you come from Final Fantasy or something?
Right?
Jeez.
Yeah. it's like a 1.5 scale like novelty
Mhm.
sword. It's the best.
Yeah, it's absolutely wonderful, and
It's like a Japanese claymore, if
Yeah.
such a
Yes.
thing ever existed.
Yeah.
Which I do not believe that such a thing did exist. So
Maybe.
it doesn't sound like something that would exist.
not something I've heard of. And I've looked at / heard a few things about Japan. I've heard a few things.
I know things about Japan.
Right.
But
he
no.
definitely was the best actor. But my favorite character was the older samurai. Was the really thin one. I can't remember what his name is because I honestly don't know half these guys' names. Except for Toshiro Mifune is like the most famous Japanese actor of all time. So I know
Right?
his
Yeah.
name. But he was the one who did the duel with the guy who would not admit defeat.
Oh, Kyuzo.
Kyuzo, yeah.
Kyuzo is my favorite character.
No, he's
Kyuzo
one,
was
and
awesome.
honestly, his archetype is probably my favorite of all of them.
Mhm.
Like that character was my favorite one in Magnificent Seven as well, and Coburn pretty much played him exactly like.
Oh yes, I'm so glad that Coburn was playing him because Coburn, I love Coburn.
Coburn was a fan
amazing.
of the Seven Samurai too.
Yeah.
So when he got that was the role he wanted, and when he found out he got it, he goes home to his wife and says, "I'm playing the best swordsman in all of Japan."
Yeah.
Like that was what he told his
Yeah,
wife.
I'm so glad that he got that role because he did that well.
Yeah.
He did that well.
And I would say that's my favorite character from the Magnificent Seven. We'll get
Same.
more into Magnificent Seven later.
Yeah.
I actually wrote down all their names and the order in which they appeared in the film.
Okay.
So I've got that going.
I'll
You get
do that.
Kanbei Shimada first, which is his entry is really interesting because it's completely different. It doesn't have anything to do with the actual story itself.
Mhm.
And I read a lot of compelling cases on the internet that say that scene of Kanbei shaving his head so he can imitate the priest, cutting off the top knot, which is a symbol of his feudal hierarchical role as samurai. It basically sets him apart, and taking on the role of a priest is kind of the precursor. It sets the stage for what becomes a major theme throughout the work of that class distinction between samurai and the farmers. But it also has nothing to do with the actual action of the film, and serves as kind of a precursor almost to the kind of what we're now familiar with in the James Bond films, where he has this, at the very beginning of the movie, he has this completely separate adventure that has nothing to do with anything, and then you have the main titles, and then it's the main arc of the story. They kind of picture it as the precursor to that kind of
this
thing.
is considered to be the first action movie ever made.
Right.
Like of all action movies come from this movie, so that's where that would make sense. I think it's cool because one thing Kurosawa did with this movie is he would take time in scenes to develop characters, because that scene really sets that character as the strategist.
Yeah.
As the guy who's got a plan, he knows what he's doing, he's wise, he's smart, he knows what's going on. So
That's true.
yes, 3.5 hours long, but honestly, that scene, like, he makes the scenes and character development compelling enough it doesn't bother you.
Like that 3.5 hours flies faster than any other 3.5 hours you'll ever experience watching a movie, because it's good.
Yeah, and
it's just good.
It's all in service of the story. It's all taking you somewhere, and you're completely confident in the fact that you're going somewhere.
Yeah, and you like the characters enough that, like, you want to see development in them. So when they take time, like, honestly, in an American movie, you could cut that scene out and move on.
Yeah.
Bam, shave 20 minutes off of movie time.
And you would in an American film.
Yeah, but in his movie, just the way it paces and works out, like, that scene itself by itself is like a very compelling scene. So it flows well into the movie.
Absolutely. Caleb, did you have any thoughts that you wanted to share about Seven Samurai? You've been shockingly quiet over there in your corner.
I don't have a lot of thoughts specifically about Seven Samurai, only more so thoughts about Seven Samurai contrasting against Magnificent Seven.
Okay.
But I figure we might as well just get into Magnificent Seven before I say those things.
Okay, that's fine. That's fair.
So, unless you guys have anything else.
I mean, I got plenty more, but I can...
I got a lot of things to say about Seven. Like, a few more things.
Yeah,
honestly.
I could go. Yeah, go for it.
The final battle was one of the most realistic battles ever.
There
was no like stand up, like, it was nothing but like having to come up with really half-assed plans, and it was so drawn out, like an actual battle was. Like the part where they'd hide all a bunch of guys on the side of the spears, and as the bandits came through on horses,
they kill one at a time.
Yeah, after one guy would get through, they jump out and drive everyone off, and that one guy keeps going, doesn't know his buddies are back there, ends up in the village with the other guys by himself, and he gets killed. They did that. They would just keep doing it, and then they would like sneak in to steal the muskets, and it was a long, drawn-out actual battle with like 40 bandits. 40 bandits is what they had to take on, and they killed a lot of them when they went and set a fire to the place.
Yeah, I mean, it was all really set up very well. It was believable, completely realistic, and you're invested in it only because you're invested in the characters.
Yeah.
To go back to the earlier point, I mean, the fact that he sets the stage and takes the time to develop those characters makes you. I mean, when Heihachi dies, the first of the samurai to fall, you feel that. I mean, he was the lighthearted clown, for lack of a better word, of the group. I mean, and his absence is felt for the rest of the movie, because after that, the movie takes a much darker turn. Not to say that it's heavy or overdrawn, but
no, it's just,
his absence is felt.
It gets serious.
And after that, after every subsequent death, you feel all of those. So at the end, when Kanbei makes his statement, this victory is not ours. You know, again we've survived. Again we are defeated, because they lost. Over half of them are in the ground now. And you feel each subsequent loss as it happens. Yeah. And so by the end, that line has so much resonance. The farmers are celebrating, they're joyful, and the samurai are just in mourning because of the loss of so many of their own.
It's cool too, because the final battle is such a contrast. I have seen a lot of samurai movies, even some of Kurosawa's later samurai movies. It's such a contrast, because in most of those movies, the samurai, the character, will take down like 10 guys. Yeah. Really fast, quick line. They don't do that. Like so I'm expecting, like, okay, 7 samurais, but only 40 bandits. I'm like, one of those guys could take down 40 guys, but like, no, this is realistic. So like, it's a whole battle against 40.
And I was gonna say Kyozo is probably the archetype for that kind of samurai.
Yeah,
because he is that kind of samurai.
Yeah, but not everyone else isn't. It is an actual battle with them. They're just more experienced in battle than the farmers are. Yeah. So that's the only thing. And so they're actually battling.
Yeah, and that's actually what I think is the greatest strength of the movie is the fact. Well, the greatest strength in the sense of thinking of it as an action movie is that unlike pretty much any other action movie you're gonna watch, it's not like the whole thing builds up to this big final shootout where all the bad guys are killed and we lose a few of the good guys, but hey, we win. It's like this grueling experience, which is, it's not grueling for you because this movie is very, very watchable. You're not sitting there going, "Ugh, when is it going to end?"
Well,
but it's one of those things where it demonstrates to you how grueling this is for everyone involved.
Yeah, because it didn't end up in a climactic battle that was 10 minutes long. It was an hour of the movie, right?
Yeah,
maybe 45 minutes of that's the final scene is like an hour 45 minutes long.
Yeah,
because it
is
just
probably about an hour.
Battle.
Yeah,
like
it's that last stand. Yeah,
there's no just final like in other movies where final scene, fight the bad guys, kill them off, we get out of here, cool.
And it's
you really feel
10 minutes tops.
You really feel every death of characters that you like because
even farmers are like,
their deaths their deaths are not all squished together in this big climactic scene. Their deaths occur over the course of this multi-day long protracted battle, and everybody mourns. There is mourning that happens as in the middle of this battle, because it's great. It really gives you a lot
violence and vengeance too. I think there's one point where they injure one of the bandits and all the women come out with knives and just be like,
and then they drag them all off so the old woman whose son that bandit killed can deliver the crushing blow.
They were like all samurai holding the farmers off, and the old lady comes up with her own thing, and then the old
guy like, let her through, let her go.
Yeah, she goes and kills them.
Oh my god, yeah, that was, oh my word, that was incredible. This movie is so, and seriously, I love, and I had to do a lot of research, and so for me, I really did have to do a lot of research in this film because I don't know thing one about feudal Japan. I really don't.
I've seen so many movies, and me and Caleb have both been get into that pop culture, and then we are not being people who believe everything we see on TV actually do our own research. So a lot of stuff is stuff I was.
And I'm more of an Anglophile than I am kind of a guy who's really influenced by Asian culture. Yeah. So for me, this was all completely new, and it's never something I've really been interested in, let alone really immersed myself in. So it was really interesting to kind of do some research and really dig up the major themes of the film, which are the class distinction. For me, context played a huge role in understanding the overall story here. Yeah. Because without that context, the story doesn't hit as much. And I think that's something that's missing a lot of that context, because in America, we don't have a context for a lot of those things. That context is what ends up, I think, hurting more than anything the Magnificent Seven, which is kind of the Americanization. We have a lot to talk
about that. That's what I've got the most to say about.
Let's go ahead and move on to that then, because that was kind of my last major point, that I really wanted to discuss.
Yeah, we'll come.
Yeah, we can kind of tie all this together at the end after we discuss each film individually.
Yeah,
go ahead. Magnificent Seven.
Yeah, no context for anything, right?
Yeah, I watched Magnificent Seven before watching Seven Samurai, and I thought it was fun. I thought it was a good time. I had a good time with Magnificent Seven.
It's not a bad film. It's really not.
But at the same time, I wasn't super impressed by it either. I felt like that it wasn't really very impactful. It kind of struck me as odd. Without the context of having watched Seven Samurai, it kind of struck me as odd as being a choice for the month because I didn't decide on these movies. I had no part of this. This
was my call.
This was out of my hands. So, when watching Magnificent Seven, I was like, well, this just seems like an American Western with kind of an odd plot.
Yeah.
It set things up in a way that I don't know would have been at all relevant in the American West.
That's what killed it for me specifically. Is if I hadn't seen Seven Samurai, I honestly wouldn't have followed Magnificent Seven at all. I don't know what was going on because it was so weird to me. But knowing what Seven Samurai was and then watching Magnificent Seven, it doesn't apply. It didn't translate well.
Right.
Like Seven Samurai, they all come together. The thing that unites them is that they are samurai. There's that code of honor that unites them. Magnificent Seven, I guess they're supposed to be all war buddies. I think someone said that, but that was
the original plot that was completely rewritten.
Okay, that would later on. That would make sense because that made no sense. They were gathering them together. Like, what do these guys have to do with this?
So what didn't make sense in Magnificent Seven, or what wasn't really clear in Magnificent Seven, is what anyone's motivation would have been to come together and help this group of farmers in this small town, because essentially the only thing that that was tying them together was that they were all, I guess, somewhat of mercenaries. I mean,
Kinda,
I guess they're all hired guns. Well, how deep does that bond go?
Right.
Of being, we're hired guns.
But if they're hired guns, what's the whole like honor? Where's that? We got to help the defenseless.
Exactly.
Hired
Yeah,
guns
that's
are
the
not
point.
exactly.
They're hired guns, which kind of like
defeats the
especially
purpose.
in the American sense of the concept of kind of the mercenary, hired gun concept runs exactly contrary to the idea of being.
It felt to me like everyone else was there in response to the honor that Chris seemed to have, the Yul Brynner character.
Yeah, but
Chris seemed to have.
I agree.
and
I think that's where they were going with it.
Like-
but at the same time, it doesn't seem like it would have ever.
You're
That's
right.
why Steve McQueen's the only believable character to join that. And no, whoever the young guy was, the
Coburn?
not Coburn, the young one, because there's
Chico.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
Horse buckles. Oh my god.
Okay, yeah. See, because his character made sense too. And like in Seven Samurai, he sees this older master samurai. He's a young kid. He needs like a master,
Right.
so he follows him because he's honorable.
Yeah,
It kind of works in Magnificent Seven too.
it does.
And then he teamed up with Steve McQueen to take that hearse to the town. Which
but it
that scene
becomes.
didn't even really make sense.
No.
That scene made no sense. Like,
No.
what?
But the thing with the thing with Chico that doesn't make sense is that they also kind of composited some of Kikuchio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Toshiro Mifune's character.
Yeah, they composited a bunch of his character elements into Chico,
Mhm.
which
They did that.
which doesn't make any sense for that character seeking that humble, young character seeking a master, kind of archetype that his character is clearly drawn from.
Mhm.
It was a weird choice to composite those two
I
pieces.
think
together.
it had a lot to do with the fact that the actor they got to play him, who's a German actor, Horst Buchholz, and you can absolutely hear the German slipping through way more than I was comfortable with for him supposed to be playing a Mexican youth. But he was kind of an up-and-coming actor in Hollywood who never really found his niche.
Yeah.
I mean, he made a few films, and then after that was pretty much never seen or heard from again. I actually put in my notes, stop trying to make Horst Buchholz happen. It's not going to happen.
Stop,
but
Hollywood, if you're listening.
Well, he's dead now. But you could
Yes.
absolutely tell.
Really stop.
Seriously.
The man is dead.
Just
I know you got
stop.
computer animation nowadays. You saw what you did with
Peter
Peter
Cushing.
Cushing.
Peter Cushing, poor Peter Cushing. But I mean, they were really trying to give him something to do and something to really sink his teeth into. So I think they embellished the role a lot and gave him basically the best parts of two of the best characters from the Seven Samurai.
It's weird because they did that with Charles Bronson's character too. He's
Yes.
another composite character, and it didn't make sense. He
He
was
was-
supposed to be both. Well, first of all, they found him hacking wood, so he's taking the role.
He's
that
clearly
he was-
Heihachi, yeah.
Yeah, but then he does.
He never says or does anything funny for the rest of the movie.
No, and then he's
Right.
playing with the kids like he's Toshiro Mifune's character.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was they just like hacked up the characters and just applied certain like little beats of the characters to other characters for no discernible reason, because those character archetypes made a lot more sense in Seven Samurai
Mhm.
when they weren't cut to pieces and smashed together.
And I agree. And that's what made I composed a composite parallel of the individual characters from all three of these films. And it got more difficult after I had the Seven Samurai laid out.
It makes sense to do. You're like, okay, let's compare the characters. Oh wait, you get Magnificent Seven. You're like, oh,
Yeah, because there were three roles that I was just like, okay, I don't know what to do with this guy.
Yeah.
And the fact that they gave half of
because Yul Brynner's character from Seven Samurai, that he did that. They didn't
Yeah.
really composite that.
and the James Coburn character, again, non-composited.
Right.
Yeah.
But the young character they combined with Toshiro Mifune, so that's two characters in one. But then they also gave some of his stuff to Charles Bronson. But then he was clearly supposed to be Heihachi, but Harry Luck clearly had the humor part of Heihachi with no other discernible like honor or whatever.
Yeah.
And then he's also like half Shishiro or Shishiroji, because he is the guy who like knew him way of old and like joined up. But he's also clearly supposed to be part Gorobei, who is also Steve McQueen is also part Gorobei. So it's a mess
It is.
when you try to break it down beyond James Coburn
It
and Yul Brynner.
sucks because this is like one of my favorite casts of all time. I love all the actors in this movie.
It's
I love
a
Steve
great
McQueen.
film.
Yul Brynner's okay. Charles Bronson and James Coburn, though, and Eli Wallach.
Eli Wallach.
That's one thing Magnificent Seven I thought did better than Seven Samurai.
Is the villain? Absolutely, because
Yes.
a nameless, faceless villain is easier to overcome and kill.
Yeah.
But when you put a face and you give him to an actor as good as Wallach,
Something I thought was interesting about Seven Samurai versus, and this was actually a specific thing that I picked up that I really liked about Magnificent Seven, is that in Seven Samurai the bandits are more like a beast, like a bestial foe, more like
Locusts.
animals. Yeah, they're a plague almost, more than they are an actual
People.
Human, enemy,
a human
villain,
scourge
yes.
or a melon.
Right.
Yes.
Whereas in Magnificent Seven, it was totally different. There was a lot of charisma. I missed the name of the actor who played the
Which one?
Eli Wallach.
Eli Wallach.
the
Calvera.
Yes,
Yeah.
Calvera. There was such a great charisma to him, and like an actual, like, you could actually kind of almost empathize with his situation to a certain degree as the leader of this group of thugs, and purely you could empathize with him in a way that there was no opportunity, because in Seven Samurai the bandits were just a plague.
They weren't human.
Right.
Well, and that's
Really?
what's great is there's a scene where where Eli Wallach and his bandits show up and they take over the town basically. So there's a confrontation, an actual verbal confrontation between Eli Wallach and the Magnificent Seven, especially Yul Brynner. So yes, there's actually it kind of makes things personal. It makes it. It's one thing I think Seven Samurai lacked, is it drove that villain in a little bit more.
Mhm.
And am I under the impression that the gang running around with Eli Wallach was an actual gang?
That's from what I've read. That's kind of what I've picked up on.
And they would not let him have a gun or a horse unless they inspected it every moment he had it.
Yes.
Like he would actually, after set, would just ride off with them for a few hours.
Yeah, like once he got into character, like into costume and stuff, they'd all just go out and ride their horses around in the desert for a while, and then just like randomly come back and film a scene.
Yeah,
like it was.
But
Yeah,
everything
everything I've read.
I'm glad I get the same impression, because I don't think anyone's explicitly said it, but it's very heavily implied that was an actual gang.
Yeah, and I mean, and of all the people, Eli Wallach is honestly, if there was one member of that cast that I could have like just hung out with for like a day, it'd be Eli Wallach, because that guy's just so cool.
You won't want to do with Yul Brynner or McQueen from what I've read.
Oh my word! No, they had my favorite part of watching was counting all the times when Yul Brynner was in the foreground and Steve McQueen was just doing crap in the background to try to draw attention and draw focus.
They were like competed. They hated each other.
Oh, they hated each other. Which is funny because Yul Brynner is the reason Steve McQueen got cast in that movie.
Yeah, well, I read later that Steve McQueen, like as they're like way older, like a month before he died,
McQueen's on his deathbed. Yeah,
actually called him or wrote him letters saying like thank you, because honestly, if it wasn't for you, I would not have been.
I wouldn't have a career.
Yeah,
basically.
it was because Yul Brynner's like, hey, I want him in my movie. But
Yeah.
then he had
And Yul Brynner was a huge star at the time too. Like Steve
Yeah.
McQueen was a nobody. Like now we would say Steve McQueen is the much bigger star of the two.
Yeah.
But Yul Brynner was the guy in 1960, and you didn't cross him. And Steve McQueen did nothing but cross him the entire time they were on set. It was, I mean, just watching like the documentary on the DVD, which I did as a kid, and listening to like reading just comments and things about the film, like that part just always cracked me up. And so when I was watching it, I paid attention, and he's, checking his hat, like lifting it up and fidgeting and, leaning way over to get a look at Britt when he's throwing the knives. And I mean, it's all ridiculous.
It is, yeah.
And so completely overblown, but also absolutely wonderful. Also, Eli Wallach was so afraid that he looked foolish, like trying to put his gun away and missing the holster. You can always see him like looking down at his holster before he puts the gun in, because he's trying not to miss his holster. So every time you can see him just like take a look.
Well,
down
that was
and
his
go,
first Western. See, for me, Eli Wallach is Tuco from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
That's true.
So for me, he's just a gunslinging piece of trash. But
because
but he wasn't that until then.
No, yeah, and I'm sure a big part of the reason why he got that role was from his role in Magnificent Seven.
Yeah. So I really like the cast. Like I said, it has Charles Bronson in it, who I freaking just adore.
You are
they're one
inordinate fan of Charles Bronson.
They're one Lee Van Cleef away from being a Sergio Leone film.
Really?
Okay, so
what an interesting way to phrase that.
I really hate American Western movies. I honestly didn't like Magnificent Seven. I know my grandma's probably going to come back from the dead and kill me because I'm pretty sure this was her favorite movie.
My dad loves it. In fact, my dad and I, my dad got the remake for Christmas.
Yeah.
And so we were going to get together at some point, watch the original, and then watch the remake right after.
I wonder what that's going to be.
Well, I heard that was good. Like my mom said, it's a great movie. They watched it on Christmas, but I don't like American westerns. The ending to this movie was just so American Western like.
Yeah.
And I guess, honestly, spaghetti westerns like that too, but they tend to be more violent and crazy. This like in juxtaposition, Seven Samurai, the final battle is drawn out an hour. In this, I'm pretty sure it's 5 minutes long. They walk into the town and just shoot everyone in Western style. So like they're not even looking, the guns are just flying off and people are falling down.
And I mean, there's no real skill required at any point.
No, in like
it
five,
happens so effing fast.
Like all of the quote unquote samurai die in like the span of 2 minutes. And
I seriously looked down to write a note, and I looked back up, and like 2 characters were dead. I had to rewind to see how they died and when.
Yeah. It was just
ridiculous.
It was exactly that American way of doing that final battle to a T, and it just completely sucked out any of the like dramatic weight of anything that was happening there.
Yeah.
Which Seven Samurai had in spades.
Yeah, and because it built that goodwill and it fostered that throughout the 3.5 hour long running time. American audiences can't be bothered to sit anywhere for 3.5 hours unless it's binging Netflix.
Well, like I said, you could. But I didn't have Netflix back then.
True.
And like I said, I don't know. Maybe you could have cut some scenes out. They could have been done better. They could have actually had the characters be the characters and not be composite characters and confuse you. Like, what? I'm just here because you're an actor and I like you. I actually don't care about the character. That's the reason I liked him, because I like them as the actor.
Yeah. Well, as good as the cast is, there's one fatal flaw in the casting, and that is Horst Buckles. Oh my gosh, just terrible, just awful. Did not like him at all.
Yeah. I understand. His accent did pop through a little bit.
Well, it wasn't just the accent; it was just the way he played the character. I didn't like it
enough. I'm watching this. I've never actually seen Yul Brynner in anything. I knew he was, but I'm watching this, and the whole time I'm thinking, "Are you a robot? Are you a robot?"
Westworld. And it's funny because the character he plays in Westworld is
actually
identical.
Yeah,
is basically identical to the character he plays in Magnificent Seven.
Yeah,
like costuming and everything. In fact, it got so hard when I was putting together graphics for this podcast. It was I had to like really look to see, okay, are his eyes gleamy and dead? Is his face super old? Because if so, this is from Westworld and not Magnificent Seven. I should find a different picture.
I imagine it would have been hard, but that's because to me, like one of my Flash of the Rocket Man in the band has him as the logo on their shirt and stuff. So that's what I see as a robot all the time now.
Well, and he does have a very almost robotic delivery of most of his lines.
It throws me off that he's bald, like no hair.
Yeah, yeah, that surprised me too.
In that respect, he's perfect for the Kanbei role because Kanbei's bald, Yul Brynner's bald.
Yeah, it's just funny because
he was pretty much the only bald actor in Hollywood at that point. So it's like, who are we gonna hire?
Yeah,
not Telly Savalas, so we've got to go with Yul Brynner.
Well, and whenever I looked at that, I was like, Like whenever I was watching Seven Samurai, I was like, I wonder if they cast the way they did for Magnificent Seven partly because of the fact that Kanbei
Shimada
was bald in that, but purely because he shaved his head for something that was relevant to developing his character.
Yeah,
right.
And I'm like, well, that's
neither here nor there.
That's just another that just like struck me as being just. Even if it wasn't intentional, more just missing the point.
Well, you know what's funny? What we say about this is Akira Kurosawa considered this movie to be phenomenal. He actually sent Sturges a ceremonial samurai sword as a gift.
I've read conflicting reports.
I don't know. He's Japanese. He doesn't know.
Oh, that's what I was thinking. He doesn't speak English.
Well, because I read the thing about Kurosawa sending Sturges the samurai sword, but I also read Kurosawa say, I don't see why they consider that of the American version of the Seven Samurai, because it's not. It's not the American version of the Seven Samurai. And to that degree, he's got a point, because they're missing a lot of and this is, again, the thing I think that weakens the film, to go back to the point I was making at the beginning of our discussion of Magnificent Seven. It misses so many of the contextual beats because we don't have a context for that history.
Yeah.
So the whole class status just distance.
Yeah, because there's no class. I mean, you can argue you get into some.
There's no class in America.
Oh, I guess it's Mexico, but there's no class war. There's not traditional classes like that. We don't have,
particularly not in the Old West.
I was making a joke.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying I'm just continuing on ignoring as we do.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we do with Caleb.
No, that's totally true though.
What does he consider to be the American version?
And
I don't think he considers there to be in there.
Clearly, he never saw A Bug's Life.
Well, he was dead when it came out.
Well,
so.
maybe we need to go back.
Well,
in time.
clearly he never saw A Bug's Life.
Well, Stu would have been like, that is the American version.
But did he see Battle from? What is it? Battle Among the Stars? Was that the name of the Roger Corman 1980s sci-fi remake of The Magnificent Seven?
I think so.
It was.
Man, I wonder how that would have gone. I wonder what social context is there.
Right? I mean, science fiction is a great... We honestly could have probably done 5 or 6 different movies that follow the...
Well, we certainly skipped the parody of Magnificent Seven.
We did. We did skip Three Amigos, the John Landis parody starring Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Chevy Chase, which is among the greatest parodies of all time.
Yeah.
Didn't even really realize it was a parody to some degree until I started doing research for this, and I'm like... Because I've seen both movies several times. I've seen The Magnificent Seven a lot growing up, saw Three Amigos a lot growing up. And then I watched them, and then I thought about Three Amigos in the context of Magnificent Seven, and I went, you idiots. How could you not have seen this sooner? Because it's a clear... I mean, the villain is even dressed. El Guapo is basically a funny Calvera.
Yeah.
Is really what it is. I mean, they're practically dressed exactly the same.
Let's talk about what happens when you remake a movie and then also remake the parody of that movie and then animate it.
Well, hold on. No, I don't want to go there yet. We've got some
he's-
interesting things to talk about the class differences. And
Yeah,
how,
we're not talking.
and how that factors.
By all means, Caleb, continue your train of
He's not
thought.
injecting himself.
Well, you guys just go off on these tangents about
do
Three
that.
Amigos, and I'm like, I don't. That has nothing to do with.
Sam
the
was
fact
trying to
that-
segue us into our last movie, and I
Yeah,
just kind of
well,
went with it.
why did you? We got so. There's so much more to talk about. How do you not know this, Sam? You watched these movies. So what,
Sam's not very deep.
So yeah. So to Steven's point, that he barely dipped his toes into before Sam tried to transition us off into a totally different topic.
Sam just really wants to talk about A Bug's Life. I think that's what it is.
That's fine. We'll
You'll
get there.
You'll
We've got
get your
plenty of
chance,
time.
buddy.
Anyway, so to get back to that point that Stephen was saying is the lack of context due to the disparity between classes. It's so weird the way they do the the love story, quote unquote love story. I don't know. It's weird.
Oh, yeah.
Situation between Chico and whatever the girl's name is.
Petra.
I don't know.
Was there a love story
And-
there? Was there a love story in Magnificent Seven between them? I think there was supposed to be, but I feel like it wasn't actually there.
It was there in the sense that she looked longingly at him a few times, and then he, at the end of the movie, decided to stay there and become a farmer again.
Okay,
That's pretty much what
a
that's pretty much what a love story was in the 1960s.
So yeah, there's your love story.
For those keeping score at home,
and
That's how I fell in love with Stephanie. She looked at me and I'm like, I'll stay.
and how that compares, the way that compares to, or I guess how that is totally not at all as interesting of a story as the love story between Katsushiro and whatever.
Shino.
Sure. Yes, Shino.
Shino.
That's her name.
Why do
That
I
is
have
her
these-
name?
I have these
So-
names freaking memorized for putting that chart together.
Yeah, but I should remember Chino.
So and what's her father's name? Because
Monzo.
Yes, Monzo.
Yes, that's because
Monzo the racer.
they said those names a lot. I didn't think about that.
Yeah. No, Monzo the Blade.
Monzo
I
the
think
Blade.
that would be the correct reference to make. Anyway, the point is, well, Steven doesn't know anything.
Japanese,
Me and Sam
No.
are Japanese people here.
which is funny because that's a reference to something else too.
Yeah.
References.
Anyway,
References are fun.
that's a Japanese reference to another Japanese thing that is probably also tangentially a reference to Seven Samurai.
Yeah.
Probably.
More or less.
In some sort of triangle.
in some
shenanigans.
haphazard way. We'll
Anyway,
get back there.
Those of you who are not Japanese scholars among us don't need to worry about that. But no, the way that it's presented in Seven Samurai, or I guess the way that love story is presented in Magnificent Seven, is also really strange. Just because of the fact that it doesn't have the context of the class difference between the two of them. Because you've got in Magnificent Seven, she's basically like, oh, my father, he's mad because I'm coming over here to talk to you. Like he's real mad about it. Because you're a boy, I guess.
No, it's because he's a samurai, and there was this.
No. I'm
Magnificent
talking
Seven.
about Magnificent.
Oh, Magnificent Seven. Oh, yeah.
I guess
No,
he's
all
real
the
mad because
context
you're
is-
like a boy. I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seven Samurai, everything makes
And
sense.
we're Mexicans. It's like,
So are you, and I mean, your name is literally Mexican for boy child.
yeah, okay, so
So,
we're both
whatever.
Mexicans, and you're a boy. So my dad's mad because he thinks that you're up to no good because you're one of us. Anyway, whereas in Seven Samurai, there's actually like an understandable like class difference, like the whole Mifune's speech about how the samurai, that class of people is what made the farmers into what they are. It is why the farmers are afraid of them. It is why the Monzo doesn't want his daughter to be to have anything to do with the samurai.
Why he hides her.
Why
Exactly.
he does the William Shakespeare thing of dressing her like a boy.
And where in Magnificent Seven, there's no reasonable explanation for why everyone in the town would be so afraid of the cowboy. These they're not
Gunslingers.
These gunslingers. There's no reason because they're hiring them. These dudes are not like in any way like culturally, racially, class related.
The funny thing
to
is,
them in any sense, they're hiring them as hired guns. So there's none of the same.
the funny thing is they try to explain it. Like they bring out the old man, whose character name is literally Old Man, who's he's a Mexican played by a Russian or some kind of Eastern European, which is hilarious to me.
Because you can't possibly have a Mexican in there.
Well, no, they were playing the literal Mexicans.
Yeah, I mean, not everyone's Charles.
A reference to
a Mexican in the movie.
in Touch of
That's
Evil.
the only-
Okay. Move on. What were you saying?
At any point, is they actually try to bring out the old man to kind of explain it like, oh, farmers are afraid of everything. They're afraid when it's windy. They're afraid when it's rainy.
Yeah, but
they're afraid when it's sunny. And you're like, this is BS.
yes, exactly.
You're
It's
like,
such a
this
BS
explains
excuse.
nothing.
Like, yes, it's such a BS excuse. Whereas in Seven Samurai, there is a real social, like, societally understood and historically valid reason for these farmers to be terrified of these samurai and to be so hesitant in bringing them into their town, because it very well, based on their past experiences with them, the way that the classes are divided at this point in Japan, there is a very real possibility that bringing these samurai into their village could ruin them.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, when Granddad at the beginning of the film suggests, bringing samurai to defend, they're like, are you insane? Do you understand what that will do? And again, within the context of feudal Japan, that's an insane request. We're just like, oh, what's the big deal? It's samurai, whatever. They're just bringing in gunslingers. Okay, they may be, afraid because they're, kind of people of questionable character. They're drifters. They don't belong anywhere. Therefore, they must be dangerous.
Except for Chico.
Right. I mean, we can kind of infer, but we have nothing really to go on. There's not that depth of context that you get, and therefore I think a lot of the thematic issues, even the end, because the Seven Samurai or Magnificent Seven really does try to redo the Seven Samurai's ending with the whole "this victory belongs to the farmers, not to us. We lost."
It didn't make any sense.
It
Farmers didn't do
didn't.
anything. The farmers in Seven Samurai had spears. They were little foot soldiers. They did everything.
Yeah.
And they were killing the bandits themselves. But like Magnificent
In
Seven.
Magnificent Seven, they killed maybe a few.
Maybe.
They ran out with their hoes and rakes and like.
You pick up the government gun and you turn it around and you use it as a club.
Yeah, I kind of thought it was kind of cool, like that battle with them, like when the peasants did like escape and actually start fighting the bandits. I thought it was kind of cool, a little bit in the context. I mean, for an American Western, it was kind of cool.
Yeah, but there was nowhere near the level of sacrifice on the part of the
Right.
farmers.
Yeah.
In Magnificent Seven versus Seven Samurai. In Seven Samurai, they fight the battle. I mean, they're the ones. Their numbers and the tactics that they've been given to fight with is what secures victory. There's no way around it. Whereas in Magnificent Seven, you could see it essentially did play out without any of their help, and you could see had they not been there, the outcome would have still been the same. Because the gunslingers did all of the important killing,
all the heavy lifting.
Yeah. So they're. Man, this Magnificent Seven just so incredibly, unbelievably missed every mark it possibly could. It's
except for James Coburn.
Except for James Coburn.
It's just
And Neil Brenner honestly did a fun job.
Right.
I
Yeah.
have no problem with it. And
Honestly,
was actually with point and hit.
Steve McQueen, man.
and the
I like Steve McQueen, but
Who doesn't like Steve McQueen? Communist, that's who.
and people who look at the movie and be like, man, he's like a composite character. What a terrible character.
Gosh, I hate those people.
No, like I said, it was a good, great cast. Charles Bronson, great cast.
It was a good cast. I really did enjoy that part of it, but in every other way, it was a failure. I mean, think about the resolution of the love story in Seven Samurai. Yeah. It's like that class difference means that can't happen.
And she's the one that recognizes it. He doesn't.
He doesn't. He's being a naive dreamer.
He's the novice. He's the romantic.
He's being a romantic about it. But in reality, in their society, that love story could not happen, and that explains why Manzo is so angry about this. Because not only is he samurai, which he's predisposed to hating, it also means that his daughter has been soiled, and that there's no way that in their society those two could be together. So that means his daughter just is damaged. She's damaged goods, I believe he says.
Yeah,
he
at one point he says pretty much that.
Which means, So it's like that's like an irreparable damage done to his family that cannot be resolved in that time in that society.
And ultimately, her way of dealing with that is to just reject him and carry on living her life, which is what she does.
Right.
I mean, she falls right in line with the women. She continues reaping, and she keeps singing.
Whereas in in Magnificent Seven, you get this pussified American version. I'm sorry, I had to say it, where the love story just works out. It just works out. It just we're gonna assume that he's gonna stay there. He's gonna be a farmer. He's gonna be
until the sequel comes around and he does something else, which there is a sequel and Chico's in it.
Oh well,
I think he married. The actor's not at least.
Yeah, the actor's not. The character is.
He married her, I think, because I think he's married her in the third movie. There's like 4 movies.
I don't care about that. I only care about things that are pulling from the Seven Samurai.
Yeah, well, and no, I mean,
situation.
Because he even goes into to say in the American version of the scene where the two of them meet the night before the battle, before their illicit tryst that Katsushiro and Shino have. Right before that conversation they have where they're talking about their future and this can never be. We're all gonna die. This is what's gonna happen. And their version of that in the American version is, I can't stay here. I'm a loner and I gotta go. I gotta be free. When Chris and Vin ride off, which is incredibly enough, the two that actually end up surviving, other than him, when they ride off, I'm riding with them because that's who I am and I'm just awesome. And then what does he do? He stays with no motivation whatsoever. We assume, he loves her and it's great, but you're just like, ugh.
Yeah.
We saw it approvingly.
Yeah. They're like, he go stay.
It just did not have any Seven Samurai. So what a good movie. What a good movie. I'm glad we watch a good movie here on this just about every time.
We do try to watch at least one per podcast.
Can we go back to, I just want to talk about a scene in Magnificent Seven that made no sense to me.
Sure.
Was the introduction of Neil Brenner to Steve McQueen.
Yes.
What was that scene? What was going on? I didn't understand anything. It's like some people were racist, some weren't, but then you had to take the coffin 10 feet.
Yeah. It was weird. It was just
there's a scene you could have cut out and then had more character development.
Well, no, they had to make that same. They had to make their parallel to the kidnapped kid.
Yeah.
From the thief kidnapping the kid.
Yeah.
They had to make that was their parallel.
That was their way of trying to make a social point.
Yeah,
basically.
Yes.
But it just does. It's just the most
rang hollow,
ham-fistedly delivered social point.
Thank you. That's a great way of putting it. Ham-fisted. It really was.
It didn't make sense. None of it made sense.
No, it was clunky and awkward and not well done.
I was almost following it. We're like, I want to pay for this guy's funeral. It's like, he's an Indian. We can't.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, then they just didn't do it. Then they took the coffin. This thing that didn't make sense because they took the coffin like 20 feet down the road where there's some guys with guns. They stood off for a second, and then the guys with guns walked away, and they left the coffin there and told someone else to bury it.
It's like, okay, so now that the coffin is there, the problem's gone?
Yeah.
How? In what way?
Yeah, how does it not get desecrated in the night?
Well, how do the people who are trying to bury the coffin not get shot?
Right?
There are so many things that could
I won't shoot Neil Brenner or Steve McQueen, that's fine, but those guys.
Yeah.
Forget those guys.
They're not the main characters.
And honestly, really, And it seemed like at the end of the day, no one really cared about the dead guy so much as they cared about the hearse. Like, because he's that cost me $80 and it's the only one in the county and you can't do nothing with it.
This guy's like, I'll pay for the damage of the hearse. I just want to see what happens.
Yeah, me too. And then he holds up the money. He's like, drinks are on me. And the guy grabs his money back and you're like...
they're like some wandering businessman is paying for a funeral anyways.
Right.
You know what? Like, I can't do that. That's
nothing
stupid saying.
Nothing. Yeah.
It was. I can see what they were trying to do, but again, ultimately, I think it was like so many of the actual deeper parallels that the film needed to make. And this is, I think, why Kurosawa says it's not the American version, because it lacks all that subtext and all that context.
Yeah.
I think it just ultimately.
I don't think you can have an American version because the same issues. Yeah, the same kind of issues and societal topics just don't exist.
An American version would really just be to completely just remake the Seven Samurai, only be speaking English the whole time.
Yeah.
That'd be the only way to really do an American version of it.
Yeah, and it wouldn't have anything to do with America.
No.
For sure.
No, because we don't have that. We don't have context.
We'll get Tom Cruise and Matt Damon in it.
But
Tom Cruise has already done a samurai movie.
Also, there was a really pretty shot towards the very end of the movie that I thought was profoundly beautiful, where they're standing below the graves of the fallen samurai, and there's the three living samurai standing kind of like
almost right in between.
Yeah, right in between each of the four.
And they're all marked by the swords. Yeah, the blades sticking out.
It was really beautiful, and I'm sure it means something, and it probably meant something to me, but I don't know how to decode it. I think maybe
he would take his time. He was a good director. He would take his time to actually establish shots. It's still painting pictures with the.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, maybe he was trying to say that, whenever they say that they lost, and maybe they're trying to paint the image of above them, high above them, the fallen samurai.
This is what we have lost.
And they've lost, but also in a sense, those samurai have passed on to perhaps those ones who fell didn't lose so much as they did. Hence them being down below and the fallen samurai up high.
Whatever you want it to mean.
I was going to say, you may be reading into that, but I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you otherwise.
They passed on into the life stream that the Japanese believe in. What's that called? Genova. You know the one. Stephanie, right?
You're done.
Yeah.
Okay, you are done, right?
Yes, I'm done.
Let's move on to the.
Let's talk
Bugs
about
Life.
Let's talk about the other one.
My personal favorite Pixar movie. It might not be the best, but it's my favorite.
I would definitely argue that
You're
it's the most underrated Pixar film.
I had all the action figures as a kid.
It's not a bad film. It's actually really great, and I think the reason for its lack of success was the very public feud that they were having with DreamWorks at the time over the release of Ants. Because ultimately, I think Bugs Life was probably the more enduring film because no one really remembers Ants anymore.
A Bug's Life was more enduring a month after they came out. No one cared about or watched Ants.
What's the one with Woody Allen in it? Was Woody Allen in Ants? He was in Ants. Yeah, I don't remember the movie.
Woody Allen, Gene Hackman, Sylvester Stallone.
Wow.
Why do I know that?
Way better cast for Bugs Life. Way better cast in Bugs Life.
What is this? Expendables?
Expendables with bugs.
I feel like, as I recall, and it's been, since 1996, whenever I saw Ants.
1998.
Oh, whatever. 98, when I saw it, when it came out on video, was the last time and the only time I will have ever seen Ants.
Ditto.
I'm pretty sure it pretty much was Expendables with bugs.
I don't remember it well enough to. Yeah. I seriously just know that it had.
I remember being a lot more violent.
Yeah, it was.
I remember not being allowed to watch it.
It was actually like an actual war movie.
Yeah, they were
actually they were militarized.
Yeah,
it was.
It was. I remember being really violent.
It was not A Bug's Life.
No, Bug's Life. The remake. It's basically a remake of Magnificent Seven and Three Amigos,
which is the parody of Magnificent Seven. So it basically follows almost exactly the same plot structure that we've discussed up to this point, with one major difference in that there is the case of mistaken identity with performing artists, which is the main plot device that drives the Three Amigos. Is that a Mexican town sees a silent film with these three actors in it, thinks they're real warriors, so that when these guys are out of work, they get a telegram, which they mistake as a call for work, and so they go down to do an appearance with this El Guapo guy, and find out that they actually that it's actually real, which is exactly what we find out to be the case in A Bug's Life. So it really does. The major narrative difference that I noticed was what I call the John Landis effect, because John Landis was the director of the Three Amigos, in that we have that element of parody that's combined in the case of A Bug's Life, I think really enhances the overall film.
Mm. Yes, I was going to say that worked really well for Bug's Life, because then you have to deal with the Magnificent Seven problem. Like, how are all the characters connected? How do they know each other? Let's gather them up. Oh, they're all circus people. Bring them in.
And you don't have to take the time to establish every character either,
Yeah.
which is one of the things that, takes the entire first hour of the Seven Samurais. You're literally establishing who everyone is and what their character is. And it takes up about the first, half of Magnificent Seven.
Yeah.
Is getting the entire, getting the band together. That device, Kurosawa was probably one of the first ones to use that in narrative, and now it's all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
I started making a list of different places where I'd seen it, like Alan Moore's League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the Sean Phillips comics, Seven Psychopaths, Blues Brothers, all sorts of movies.
Sure. A side note, because I don't think we actually explicitly got to it. I think Sam started to say it, but that's one of the things that in Magnificent Seven versus Seven Samurai, like Magnificent Seven fell flat on. Because you said the gunslinger thing, but did we explicitly state that it's because they were samurai that they would be honor
I actually
bound
specifically
to...
said
Okay,
that.
I didn't know if that ever
kind of
actually
the
got
honor
out.
bound, but that's the connection that they have with each other.
Right.
So they have this understanding. So when one wants to do something good, he kind of understands and he goes with it.
Yeah,
He's
they
I
have and a respect for one another,
Yeah.
which would lead one to follow.
Yeah, and you have to deal with that in Bug's Life because they're all circus performers. They're already a troupe already, so you can just accept it and move on.
And
they're
the great
already
thing about that
bound
is
together.
and the great thing about that is you get to establish, they very, very quickly get to establish what all these characters are like all together. So you don't have to, waste the time, whatever. You don't have to spend the time to individually introduce them and also give them a common cause.
And they work better as a group than they do individually. Yes, there are certain characters that fall within certain archetypes, but by and large, they work better as a team, which is why my parallel characters kind of started to crumble a little bit when I got to A Bug's Life, because they don't fall into those very neatly categorized archetypes like they did in Magnificent Seven and Seven Samurai. More so, obviously, in Seven Samurai.
And a lot of their characters, they play off each other. Like, that's what the character is. Like, the Black Widow and the Giant Beetle.
Right.
Like,
they're intertwined with one another to where that you really wouldn't be able to split them into two characters.
So there are a lot
of purposes of the movie.
There are a lot of points that are different, but honestly, I think Bug's Life did a really good job at being Bug's Life. I have no real qualms with it. Like Magnificent Seven, where things fall flat, like it hit a lot of points just differently.
In what ways? Give me some for instances.
I mean, they didn't have like the same type of characters, so it's kind of hard to make comparison to characters across the board.
Mm-hmm.
But they did basically the same things, like where Flick gets kicked out, like the Queen or the Queen in training tells him to go off and like just try and get him out of there. So they basically tell him to leave and go find these people, but they weren't being serious about it. So they do it differently, just but it works everything in Bug's Life.
What I like about one of the things I like about A Bug's Life, what it did as an Americanized version of this kind of story, is it made the only love story that happened in the movie was between two people in one of those class categories.
Mm-hmm.
So you avoid even having to make that kind of comparison or parallel to.
And that's not the social point that Bug's Life was trying. Their social point was more ants versus grasshoppers than it was. The circus freaks are kind of the ones in the middle.
Right.
Yes, and that would actually be a good thing, is Bug's Life actually was specifically making social points about classes. Because there are actually different classes, because you have ants that are the working class. This is very much communist propaganda, if you think about it.
Right.
Karl Marx would be proud of this.
Yes, he would love it.
This would be more. This is more relevant class discussion to now.
Yeah,
it's much more relevant to now. Like whereas Seven Samurai's class structure and the statements it was making on class wouldn't be relevant to us because it's
that dealt with feudal Japan.
Right.
We don't have feudal America. We have working class America.
Here it's about power. It's about power struggle. Classes.
Yeah.
Class power struggle more than anything.
Yeah. Who has it more? Yeah.
But in the fact that it was able to broach those class issues, I think puts it closer to the mark that Seven Samurai was attempting to make than Magnificent Seven was ultimately.
That's what I'm saying is that it hit points. It didn't do it the same way, but it hit basically the same points. It hit points just the way that it worked for itself. Honestly, because it's more of an American version really than Seven Samurai.
Maybe Bug's Life is the American version.
In that it instead of trying to adapt the same themes, it takes and
it does the same thing with different themes.
It creates equivalent themes that are relevant to its place and time.
Yeah, that works.
One thing that I think that A Bug's Life does particularly well in this lineup of movies is the way it characterizes its villains, which the grasshoppers are fantastic. Like Hopper is a wonderfully characterized villain. Like he takes
Kevin Spacey is a villain. Like we had this conversation. Like, what do you mean Kevin Spacey villain? Like Kevin Spacey is a villain.
Yeah,
always.
I freaking love Kevin Spacey though.
Yeah, and so Hopper, like where Calvera was, actually a characterized villain,
right? Unlike the Bandit Chief,
which does he even have a name?
No, it's
I don't know which
the
one
Bandit
the
Chief
is because
it's hard to tell. There's one with an eye patch, and there's one
that seems more like a
And they're both wearing the pointy hat.
Yeah, the hat with the giant crescent in the
Who's
front.
running this show?
Exactly. Yeah, it's very.
We really need a lot more of the bandits, honestly.
But yeah, so Calvera was great in that he helped humanize and thus create villains of the foe, and Hopper and all of the grasshoppers are wonderfully characterized to where that not only do you have one character that's kind of representing the villainy, the human aspect of the villains. You get to see all of them interact with one another, and it's much more relatable.
You get 3 different main villains, and then there's a bunch of side villains that get lines and stuff. My favorite scene in Bug's Life, even as a kid, it's steered in my head, is when Hopper's giving the speech about what one ant stands up against us to the 3 guys at the bar. And he throws the seed, like, did that hurt? And they're like, no. He throws another seed. Did that one hurt? And they're laughing, like, no, Hopper, are you crazy? And he knocks it, all the seeds crush him.
Yeah, and he's just standing there just glowering. It's so awesome. Well done.
It's awesome because not only is it funny and also brutal.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure they died.
It's also
they're corpses now.
It's also like a profoundly simple visual demonstration of the concept that they're talking with, which as a kids movie, it's fantastic.
Yeah,
at representing the point that they are making,
and ultimately foreshadows the ending of the film, where the ants do in fact realize their power.
Exactly,
and that I think is more indicative of the original Seven Samurai ending, in that the victory really does belong to the ants. It doesn't belong to the circus bugs because they didn't do anything.
Yeah.
They facilitated the change that happened in the ant colony, but
they were basically the tools that Flick used in order to protect the colony.
Right. And whenever push came to shove and the battle broke out, they did their part. But they in no way are responsible for the victory. It's purely the ants. They fought for and won their victory.
And that is more, again, much more in line with what the Seven Samurai ending was about, and what Kanbei was saying, in that, this is their victory. This is the victory for the ants. The circus bugs, it's not their victory. They didn't lose per se like the samurai had, or even the Magnificent Seven had, because no one dies because it's a Disney movie. Except for Hopper. That is one of the most terrifying Disney villain ends ever.
Yeah.
Because those birds, those baby birds, just have those lifeless eyes and those big chubby cheeks.
They're making up for 7. The ending of 7. Like, yeah, you have to. You have to come back from that somehow. Kevin Spacey's the villain in both those movies.
Yes, you should know that.
Also, The Usual Suspects.
Yeah.
Also, Superman Returns.
Yeah.
Also, House of Cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Sam was right. I think Kevin Spacey is a villain.
I think he's the hero of House of Cards.
But he's not, though. There is no hero in House of Cards. There's only villains.
I've not seen that show. Let's move on.
You absolutely need to see House of Cards.
I think the heroes of House of Cards are the American public. Unfortunately, the heroes don't win.
No, they don't.
Unlike the ants, the Russian ants. I mean, what?
What?
Working nothing.
But no, I definitely
It could
think.
be Chinese.
But in the same sense,
There are a lot of them.
in the same sense, it was interesting that you brought up the fact that the animalistic nature of the bandits in Seven Samurai. I compared them to locusts. In A Bug's Life, they're literally locusts.
Yeah,
because grasshoppers and locusts are basically cousins.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's the same thing, and it kind of takes us full circle, really.
Like, I know Andrew Stanton and what's his face,
John Lasseter.
John Lasseter, like made that, but I wonder if they really were thinking that deeply about it. Like, I wonder if they sit in Pixar and think this thing about these movies. I wonder if, I do wonder if the people that make these films pick them apart the way
Andrew
we do.
Stanton does.
Yes, but then Andrew Stanton
I don't know
does
about
stupid
John Lasseter.
things, and I hate Andrew Stanton.
Why?
Because he messed up John Carter Mars. He messed up John Carter Mars so bad.
Yes,
not
he
producers.
did.
Everyone says producers. He messed it up.
The producers are only involved insofar as they let him do what he wanted to
the
do.
problem is they gave him too much power.
Yeah.
They didn't do it right. They gave him too much power. He got to do whatever he wanted with that on, like, even marketing.
That's why you never give Final Cut.
No, Final Cut doesn't bother me.
Final Cut
Cut's
Pro.
fine. giving a director Final Cut's fine. It's giving them marketing. Like,
Yeah.
you gotta
somebody has to be somebody disconnected from the production of the film has to be involved at some point.
Yeah, you got to get some outside, like
At least from the creative aspect.
Anyways, I would have loved him up until I learned those things about him and John Carter of Mars. Which
But Wall-E is still the best
Yeah, Wall-E
Pixar
is
movie.
pretty
It's a work
great.
of art. It's
Yes,
absolutely
it
a
is.
masterpiece.
It is.
It really is, and on every level.
It is
I
the
love
masterpiece. It is the pinnacle of animated films, and as far as I'm concerned, like as computer animated films, at least, I feel like it's artistically the pinnacle.
Them strong words, Caleb.
Yeah. I mean, you show me an art house computer animated film.
Do you want me to show you in our house?
No, shut up. I'm not done. That has the first like 20 minutes is pure silence and is supposed to keep the attention of kids, and it successfully kept kids' attentions.
Okay.
Basically being a silent film for the first 20 minutes.
Well, it depends. This is
amazing.
amazing. Keep their attention.
Huh?
Well, I'm thinking it could definitely keep their attention.
Okay, you know what? Let's not worry. I don't know what you're talking about, but I don't like it. I don't like it.
Stop, Sam. Quit while you're behind, buddy. Any more to say about A Bug's Life? Because we veered. You talk about us going on tangents.
We're still talking about Pixar. It's fair game.
I'm not going to say that tangent was all yours because Sam's the one that took us off the end.
Still Disney
pigeonhole, but
it's fine. Still Pixar.
It's all Disney. It's all Pixar, and as we all know, the Pixar universe is a shared universe amongst all the films.
Thank you, John Negroni.
So, with that being said, I think that John Carter is a totally valid topic to go on to because it's clearly a shared universe.
But it's not the film that we're discussing this evening.
Yes, that's true. But it is the universe.
So I will ask again: does anyone have anything else to add about A Bug's Life and the way that it kind of ties into the other films?
It's still my favorite Pixar movie. No, actually,
it's good. I think that in terms of being a reimagining of this plot, I think it's better. It's the best reimagining.
You would say better than The Magnificent Seven?
Easily.
Okay,
I mean,
easily.
that's not even.
You still had a great cast.
Have you listened to this podcast up to this point? I mean, we tore that to shreds.
I pretty much haven't been paying attention the entire time I've been here. So.
Okay.
One thing I liked about Bug's Life that to me is one of the most brilliant things I've ever seen in a movie was the outtakes at the end.
They didn't do that for Toy Story. They started doing that for their next few films, and then I don't know why they stopped doing that because that was the best part of seeing a Pixar movie.
Well, maybe because it's overplayed, but no, outtakes with the animated Bug movie was the most funny thing I've ever seen committed to film because like someone would knock over a camera, you'd see like a bunch of bugs like boom mics.
It was definitely a funny gag. I feel like that they kind of like felt like they played it out probably. At that point,
because they only did it for a few films.
Well,
they did it for that. They did it for
several.
Toy Story 2. They did it for Monsters Inc.
They did it for Finding Nemo. So as far forward as Finding Nemo,
they didn't.
Yes, there were.
They did outtakes for Finding Nemo.
Hey, Stephanie, were there outtakes in Finding Nemo? Bloopers, like Bug's Life?
I don't remember that at all. Actually,
at least as far as Finding Nemo, there were.
Okay.
But beyond that,
I can see where it gets played out real fast.
Well, and you can't really do that.
Single film in between there.
you can't really do that
It
for
wasn't all of
Wall-E
them?
either, because
No.
Wall-E would have been the next one, I think, follow-up to, or was it?
Was Incredibles before or
That was
after
10 years after.
Finding Nemo?
Oh, Incredibles didn't have it either.
Because it
There's
didn't
also
have it.
Cars, and there's a ton of movies that came after.
Cars
Cars did have it.
did.
Did you?
Cars
I hate that
did.
movie. This is the worst Pixar movie ever made,
I
outside of the sequels.
I was gonna say Cars
disagree.
2?
I disagree. I actually liked Cars. I didn't think it was the best, but I don't understand why people hate it so much.
'Cause
Like,
it's so
so hated.
Steve McQueen. McQueen.
Lightning McQueen.
Lightning McQueen was clearly named after
Bring
Steve
it back.
McQueen.
We're bringing it back in.
We will salvage this conversation. So, in terms of just kind of let's look at these three stories collectively. How well is this story transplanted across these three different genres? Do you guys feel? Just as kind of as a whole.
Well, I don't know what genre the Bugs movie falls into besides a scientific documentary, because that's how Bug Life actually works. It's in the name, Bug's Life. I saw it first on this on PBS.
Yes. Ants have 4 legs.
Yep.
That is a scientific fact.
Scientific facts.
Kevin
They-
Spacey is a locust grasshopper, and I'm sure that's his spirit animal. It's a nasty grasshopper.
Ants definitely pile up food for grasshoppers on a big rock out in front of their anthill. I've seen it.
Queen ants keep little aphids as pets.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bugs definitely build cities underneath of trailers.
I can show you one right
That,
now.
is, that one is definitely true.
Ours is a ghost town.
Ours has been wiped out by a fungus plague.
Yes.
We'll talk about that.
Uh,
Know where I live.
Yours is a Silent Hill of bug towns.
More or less. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, honestly.
We'll find out.
They're not bothering me. I'm still breathing.
Yes, breathing spores.
I'm gonna be the first of them.
Aren't we all, though?
Aren't we?
Yes,
all?
we are actually.
Yes, they're
You're
everywhere.
inside of my house.
Well,
So all of us right here are breathing
that's
spores.
true, but spores are everywhere. Also, there's that as well.
Where are we talking about? Oh yes, the
Um,
story works for Japanese people and bugs, not cowboys though, or
Yeah.
Mexicans.
Unless yeah, it does. It really doesn't
It
work.
does not.
It doesn't.
No,
work.
if Magnificent Seven did the same thing that Bug's Life did,
It could have worked,
it could have worked.
but it would have meant instead of trying to remake the story, like trying to find equivalent
Mhm.
issues and stuff.
Yeah, well, Bug's Life
That works.
that is our class story. Like that can be applied even to Mexico because they are American. That is like that is a Western class story right there.
Mhm.
Because I mean, our feudal Western way went away like hundreds of years before Japan even went. Japan feudal system went away like 150 years ago, 170 years ago. It's rather recent that all that went away
Yeah,
because
it's
they were
all
very
pretty
isolationist
relevant.
for a while, so they were very stagnant for a long time.
Magna Carta snitches.
But, yeah, but American like feudal system went away so long ago. So like our style of like class warfare and stuff is like 500 years old. It's kind of been the same like that. So that would apply to even to Mexico, having working Mexicans like oppressed by a horrible grasshopper, giant grasshopper. So anyway, Roger Corman should have made Magnificent Seven.
Well, he did do the sci-fi. I've got to find out what that's called now. That's
think
gonna
you're-
bug
I
me
think
the rest
you're
of the
right.
night.
I think you're right.
He did do a sci-fi, and I found it in my research for this podcast. I just don't for the life of me. And it had Robert Vaughn in it, one of the Magnificent Seven. So we got that going for us.
This is totally on topic, but there could be a problem for this podcast. But I wanted to say one thing I was really disappointed with in Magnificent Seven.
Battle Beyond the Stars was the name of the Roger Corman remake of the Magnificent Seven, which starred George Peppard, Robert Vaughn, Richard Thomas, also known as John Boy Walton, and a bunch of other people I've never heard of.
Well, we know that. What's the one thing about Magnificent
The
Seven?
one thing that I that I take issue with in Magnificent Seven,
Other than all the other things you took
other
issues
than
with?
all of the rest of the movie, is
except for Eli Wallach.
Brit.
Really? Why do you take issue with Brett?
One issue with this character, which is that he is built up as this knife-throwing master, and he, at no point during the actual battle, uses a knife to kill anybody. The only time he throws a knife is in his... No, he doesn't. The one time he throws a knife is while dying, and he does not it doesn't go anywhere. It sticks into the fence right in front of him.
I feel like we need to remake this movie.
He shot everybody else that was around. Like, I was so...
He only had the one knife, Caleb. What do you want?
He shouldn't have had only the one knife. If he's a knife master, why doesn't he have tons of knives?
He's not Danny Trejo's character from Desperado.
He should have been. Look, James Coburn would have been a better Danny Trejo. I don't know about that. Yeah, no, I like...
His entire character.
I stand by it. He should have been.
His character, his master character, his mastery is entirely sold to you on him throwing a knife faster than someone can shoot a gun.
But if he can throw a knife that fast, imagine how quickly he can shoot a gun.
But
that's not the same
point.
type of skill. That's not the same skill set.
It's not.
Those are not.
It's not the same skill set.
But you already know
he's
he's an amazing shot because he shoots that guy off the horse, and the guy's like, "That's the worst shot or this is the best shot I've ever seen." He's like, "The worst. I was aiming for the horse," which is a funny line. It's a freaking funny line. It's my favorite line of the movie.
Which demonstrates that he should have been throwing knives.
But dude, he can shoot a guy off a horse. He doesn't need to throw knives.
I'm just saying. Where Kuzo demonstrates his mastery every time he's in a situation where
it's true. He is the master of all situations. Every time he does something, he's like
Brit doesn't demonstrate mastery in any place.
Also,
other than when he's really impressive with that knife. Otherwise, he's just another guy shooting a gun.
Going back to actually our last podcast, Mad Max Fury Road, there is a scene from Fury Road that's taken from Seven Samurai.
Really?
Which one?
Yeah,
remind me.
What's our? I can keep track of the names. What's the thin samurai master's name?
Kyuzo?
Yeah, he wanders off into the bandit camp and comes back with their musket.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah, like in Mad Max Fury Road, where he wanders off and blows up the stuff and comes back with all their guns.
That's true.
Like in the same way. Like he wanders off, he's like, "I'll do it." Disappears. It comes back. He's like, "There's also 3 less bandits."
Yeah.
I'm like, jeez.
Every action movie needs a Kyuzo in it.
I think we need a movie of just like Kyuzo, but not be like follow Kyuzo. Just follow like a guy who follows Kyuzo around.
We should make a mockumentary called Finding Kyuzo.
It's set in America,
right? Set in 21st century America. So it's kind of like take Orson Welles' conceit for his Don Quixote film and apply it to the Seven Samurai and follow Kyuzo around 21st century America. It'll work.
I don't know about that, Steven.
No, it'll work. It'll be brilliant. No one steal that idea. That's mine and Sam's. We're copywriting it here.
Well, that's how copyrights work either.
Yes, it is. All rights reserved. I said it.
Yeah.
All right. So any other thoughts to wrap us up today, gentlemen?
No.
All right. Well, in that case.
Did Sam have any thoughts?
No, we share the same sentiments.
Okay.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of yet another stirring installment of Rule of Thirds. You have something to add to the conversation? Want us to read your comments on the podcast? Well, then email us, darn it, at ruleofthirdspodcast@gmail.com or track us down on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Thirds Rule. Check us out online at thirdsrule.wordpress.com. And don't forget to track down past episodes and reviews on iTunes, podcasts, or YouTube. And if you do find us on iTunes, please remember to leave us a review so we can gain more support and followers from people like you. This has been episode 104 of Rule of Thirds, entitled That Animated Spaghetti Samurai Life. Join us next month for another episode sure to make you yearn for the days when cartoons were funny, heroes were noble and true, and villains were low-life scum with no redeeming qualities whatsoever. For Samuel Dumas and Caleb Dunkerson, I'm Stephen Foxworthy, reminding you that no matter how you tell the story, in the end, thirds rule.
今度もまた負け戦だったな。いや、勝ったのはあの百姓たちだ。わしたちではない。